They looked at her like a rookie. They saw a small woman in worn jeans and a simple jacket. They told her to pick up the heavy steel beams. They joked she wouldn't last the morning. They whispered she was a waste of time. But Sarah Martinez had a secret she kept for 8 long years. She simply wrote military service on her application. She left out the part about the 3 tours in Afghanistan. She omitted the classified missions. She never mentioned the Naval Special Warfare Development Group. Her team was the most elite. Her training was the most dangerous. They thought they could boss around a newbie. They were actually insulting a warrior. And the real danger wasn't the construction site. It was what her skills would attract. Sarah needed a job. The jump back to civilian life was proving to be harder than combat. She walked into Peterson Construction on a cold Monday morning. She looked like any other applicant. She was 5 feet 4 inches and 130 pounds, and she knew she didn't look like much next to the burly, calloused men waiting for their interviews. Bill Peterson, the owner, was skeptical. He looked over her simple application, frowning at the vague military service line. He talked about carrying heavy materials, operating machinery, and 20-year veterans still going home sore every night. Sarah just met his gaze. "I'm stronger than I look," she said. There was a quiet confidence in her voice that made him pause. He offered her a trial week at minimum wage. Fair enough. She was told to find Danny Rodriguez, the foreman. Danny was stocky, tattooed, and looked her up and down with open doubt. "You're the new hire?" he asked, not bothering to hide his surprise. Before Sarah could answer, a tall man with a beer belly swaggered over. This was Tommy Brennan, and within 5 minutes, Sarah knew he was going to be a problem. He snorted a laugh and asked if she was going to hold their tools for them. He bet Danny she'd be gone by lunch. Sarah kept her expression neutral and her voice calm. "I'm here to work," she said simply. Her first job was to move a pile of steel beams across the site with her partner, Jimmy Chen. These things weighed about 60 pounds each. Jimmy explained they usually carried them 2 at a time using a shoulder technique. He offered her one to start. Sarah positioned the beams exactly as he showed her, 2 of them. She lifted them smoothly. The weight was significant, but it was nothing compared to the 100-pound pack she had carried during SEAL training, traversing miles of desert. She made the trip without stopping or showing any strain. Jimmy looked genuinely surprised. The crew's doubt began to shift, but the real test was still coming. Around 9 o'clock, Tommy decided it was time to put the Navy girl in her place. He walked over with a sledgehammer and pointed to a concrete wall that needed to be demolished. "Let's see what you've got," he said with a wide, challenging grin. The tool was heavy, about 12 pounds, and he fully expected her to struggle. A small crowd gathered to watch the show. Sarah took the hammer and felt its familiar weight. She positioned herself in front of the wall, took a deep breath, and swung. The force, the form, the perfect alignment. It was the same muscle memory she used to breach doors in combat. The concrete cracked on the first blow. She swung again and again, each hit precise and powerful. Within 10 minutes, she had demolished a section that would have taken most workers 20 minutes or more. Tommy's smirk was gone completely. The watching crowd was silent. She simply handed the tool back and said, "Practice." The crew's attitude continued to shift slightly as the week went on. She volunteered for the most difficult assignments. She climbed the scaffolding with the confidence of someone completely comfortable with heights. She never complained. But the moment that truly earned their respect and changed everything came on Friday afternoon. Outside the main trailer, a frantic scream cut the air. "Help! Somebody help!" A woman was standing next to her car, waving her arms. A small child in the back seat was unconscious. "My son stopped breathing," the mother screamed. Several workers ran toward the car, but they stopped when they got there. Panic took over. Nobody knew what to do with an unconscious child. Sarah pushed through the crowd. She looked into the back seat. The boy's lips were turning blue. She could see immediately his airway was blocked. She had maybe 2 minutes. Her combat medical training kicked in automatically. She calmly instructed the mother to unlock the door. She checked for foreign objects and quickly dislodged a piece of hard candy lodged in his throat using the proper technique. The boy gasped and began breathing again. His color returned almost instantly. He was alive. "You saved my son's life," the mother cried, holding Sarah's hands. What the crew had just witnessed wasn't beginner's luck. Danny Rodriguez was the first to speak. "Where exactly did you learn to do that?" "Military medic training," Sarah replied, which was technically true but didn't tell the full story. Bill Peterson heard about the incident and promoted her to his specialized crew, dangerous, high-paying work that would challenge her. The good news was also dangerous. Her quiet life was over. Her skills were now public. Weeks later, on a high-stakes demolition job, she found and rescued a civilian trapped in a collapsed, fire-damaged warehouse. This was textbook urban search and rescue, the kind of skill only elite, specialized teams possess. Peterson called her into his office. He demanded the truth. What exactly was her job in the Navy? Sarah knew this moment was inevitable. "I was in Naval Special Operations," she said carefully. Peterson stared at her for a long moment, slowly processing the revelation. "Jesus Christ," he muttered. "I hired a Navy SEAL." But the media attention from the rescues was a problem. It drew unwanted eyes. A few weeks later, a man in an expensive suit walked into the equipment yard. He was Agent David Walsh from the Department of Defense. Walsh didn't ask her to leave, he threatened her. He listed her classified credentials, SEAL Team 6, her 3 deployments, and said her high public profile was a security risk. He suggested a new job with a private security firm in Alaska. Isolated location, very discreet clientele. If she wasn't interested, he would review some of her past activities more closely. They thought they could scare her. They thought they could boss her around. Sarah had faced down enemy combatants in hostile territory. She wasn't running from a bureaucrat in a suit. She called Walsh. "I'm not going," she told him. "I'm staying here and I'm taking the promotion. If you have a problem with that, you can take it up with my lawyers and the media." The final confrontation came 3 days later. Sarah was working late at the construction site when 3 black SUVs pulled into the parking lot. 8 men in tactical gear emerged. These weren't government agents. Sarah recognized movement patterns. They were a private military contractor team hired to solve Walsh's problem permanently. They thought they were dealing with an ex-soldier who had gotten too much attention. They had no idea they were up against someone who had spent 8 years conducting operations just like this one. Sarah slipped out the back of the trailer and made her way toward the equipment yard. The construction site, full of heavy machinery and steel beams, was her battlefield. She used her knowledge of the terrain and her training to move like a ghost, eliminating the contractors one by one with silent, close-quarters combat techniques. None of them saw her coming. She disabled 4 of them and used the construction equipment, a strategically placed concrete mixer, a pile of steel beams, to block the others' retreat. When the remaining 4 operators tried to regroup, Sarah emerged from behind a stack of materials with a welding torch in one hand and a tactical pistol in the other. "Gentlemen," she said calmly, "I think we need to have a conversation." She forced them to drop their weapons, sending a clear, terrifying message back to the person who hired them. "The target is more capable than advertised." Sarah immediately went public with her story, using the media to shine a spotlight on the harassment. She was no longer hiding, no longer running, and no longer allowing anyone else to define the boundaries of her life. She became the lead on the company's biggest project, a new hospital complex downtown. The city specifically requested her to head up the technical aspects. The people who once doubted her, Danny, Jimmy, and even Tommy Brennan, now looked up to her. Tommy, humbled and embarrassed, approached her. "When we were giving you grief that first week," he began awkwardly. "You didn't know," she said simply. "You could have set us straight any time," he replied. "Why didn't you?" Sarah considered the question carefully. "Because earning respect through actions," she said, "is better than demanding it through reputation." She was still serving her community, still using her skills to help people, and still facing challenges that required everything she had learned. They wouldn't be the first to underestimate her. They certainly wouldn't be the last. Hit the like button to respect all our veterans and their service. Subscribe for more stories of quiet heroes.